Chapter 7, Lesson 3 and 4. 3 and 4 are both the same. They'll be adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators, so we have to find a common denominator, before we can add or subtract. So here we have 3/5 plus 1/10. We cannot add this together because we don't have a common denominator. It has to be the same, just like in lesson 1 and 2. So what I tell the kids is to ask themselves, can you change the smaller denominator into the bigger denominator? Can you change the 5 into a 10? Of course, the answer is yes. We can change a 5 into a 10 by multiplying it by 2. But I tell them to think as the numerator and denominator as brother and sister. You have to treat them fairly, and you have to do the same thing to both. So if I multiply the 5 times 2, I also have to multiply the 3 times 2. The numerator times 2 and the denominator times 2. 3 times 2 is 6. 5 times 2 is 10. Now I can go ahead and add the two fractions together. 6 plus 1 is 7, and the denominator just comes across. We don't add it. Next we have 3/8 plus 2/4. Can you change the 4 into an 8? The answer is yes. We can do that by multiplying 4 times 2. But again, we have to make sure we multiply the numerator by 2 as well. So now we got 4/8. Now we can go ahead and add both fractions together. 3 plus 4 is 7, and the denominator stays the same, and we get 7/8. We do the same for subtraction. 5/6 minus 2/3. We cannot subtract 2/3 from 5/6 until we have a common denominator. So can we change a 3 into a 6? And the answer is yes. We multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2, and we get 4/6. Now we can subtract. 5/6 minus 4/6 equals 1/6. So far we haven't had to reduce, but lesson 4 kind of goes into the reducing part of it. But what happens if you cannot change the smaller denominator into a bigger denominator? You can't change 3 into a 5. 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6. It can't be done. So what you have to do is multiply each fraction by the opposite denominator. We're going to have to multiply 1/5 times 3, and we have to multiply 1/3 times 1/5. So we have 1/5. We're going to multiply the numerator and denominator by 3. Remember, they're brother and sister. We want to treat them fairly and do the same to each one. 1 times 3 is 3. 5 times 3 is 15. On the other side, 1/3 will multiply by 5. 1 times 5 is 5. 3 times 5 is 15. Now we can go ahead and add them together. 3 plus 5 is 8, and we're bringing the denominator across, and we get 8/15. We also do the same for subtracting fractions. 3/4 minus 1/3. That cannot be done because they're not the same denominator, so we're going to have to change the denominator. We're going to take 3/4 and multiply it by the opposite denominator of 3, and we get 9/12. We'll take the 1/3, multiply that by 4, and we get 4/12. Now we can go ahead and subtract 9/12 minus 4/12. 9 minus 4 is 5. Bring the denominator across, and you're done. Here we have 2/4 plus 2/5. Can't do it. We've got to change the denominator, so I'm going to take 2/4 and multiply it by 5 and get 10 over 20. I'll take the 2/5, multiply that by 4, the opposite denominator, and get 8/20. Now we can go ahead and add those together. 10/20 plus 8/20 equals 18 over 20. But of course you can reduce it because the both numbers are not prime, and in fact they both end in even numbers. 8 and 0 is not even, but anytime there's a 0 at the end, I always tell them that they can probably reduce it. 10, 20, 30 can always be reduced by 2 or by 5 or by 10. So we have to find the common denominators for both fractions. So we got to find the greatest common factor before we can divide. Factors of 18 are 1, 9, and 18. Oops, sorry, there's a 2 in there. Factors of 20 are 1, 2, 10, 4, 5, and 20. So the greatest common factor they both have in common is the 2. So we'll take 18 and 20, divide them both by 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9, 20 divided by 2 is 10, and we get 9/10 as our answer. We've gone over greatest common factor a few chapters back, so I'll go over it again in case they can't visually see that 18 and 20 are divisible by 2. They use the greatest common factor and find the factors of a number. Then it might be a little bit more easier for them. Takes a little bit more time, but at least they'll be able to see which factor goes into both numbers. And instead of using a smaller factor, they can find the biggest one. And on their homework page, here is number 7. This is from lesson 4. We've got 3/10 plus 9/10. We cannot add those together because we don't have a common denominator. So can we change a 10 into a 20? The answer is yes, by multiplying it by 2. We're going to do the same to the numerator as well. And we get 6/20. So now I can take 6/20, add it to 9/20, excuse me, and get 15 over 20, which is not the right answer because of course we can reduce it. And they should be able to see that 15 and 20 are both divisible by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. Probably would look a little better if we do it this way. 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 20 divided by 5 is 4. So the answer is 3/4 for number 7. Hopefully this will help, and we'll see you next time.